If you're wondering what John Lennon's favorite Paul McCartney song is, then you've come to the right place. Hi, if you're just joining us, welcome to our channel. In this video, we will explore which Paul McCartney songs are considered to be the best by John Lennon. Stay tuned to learn all about it. In a more subtle sense, the Fab Four were the definition of a classic quartet. In the film Boyhood, Ethan Hawke makes the passionate argument, "There is no favorite Beatle." Exactly. That's what I'm trying to express. Everything hangs in the balance. Few things in the ever-growing canon of writing on the Fab Four are as open to personal interpretation as that. Despite appearances to the contrary, they were both a part of the same alchemically creative mix. They each contributed their unadulterated dose of singular genius, which is why the combination enticed millions of followers. Ringo replies, "Hey, can't we just appreciate what we have when we have it?" As Ethan Hawke continues to sob, Paul gets you to the party. George talks to you about God. John responds, "Nah, it's about love and misery." Keeping this in mind, let's listen to some of John Lennon's favorite songs that his old mate, Paul McCartney, composed while thinking back on the moments when he was most content to have Paul McCartney drive him to the after-party. There's no use in continuing the love fest if we ignore this sometimes explosive byproduct of their successful partnership. In particular, Lennon disliked Yesterday, a classic song by McCartney. If you're enjoying this video so far, please hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so for more Beatles content. He once told David Sheff, "The lyrics don't resolve into any sense. They're good phrases. Do you understand what I mean when I say they work? They're great, but you can't figure out what happened even if you read the entire song. That she left and he wishes she didn't is clear enough, but the issue isn't resolved. I never wish I'd written it," he said. But there are more than a handful he sincerely wishes he had written, and we'll explore those in greater detail below. John Lennon's favorite songs written by Paul McCartney. Hey Jude. We'll begin with the one that was possibly John Lennon's favorite, and he certainly isn't alone in his opinion. This one is undoubtedly one of the most popular ones. In 1972, John proclaimed to hit parader that it's his best tune. It began as a song about my son Julian, and the fact that Paul would visit him inspired me to write it. After that, he transformed it into the song Hey Jude. I had always assumed it was about Yoko and me, but he told me it was actually about him and his. Even after some time had passed, he went on record saying that he believed a mysterious undercurrent was definite to their working relationship. In 1980, he told Playboy that he had always heard it as a song to me. "What's up, John?" He was saying, "Go ahead, leave me." But it was only in his subconscious. On some level, he was actively working against me, moving forward with my plans. The angel in him was wishing you God's blessing and saying, "Bless you," because he didn't want to be without his lover. The devil inside of him didn't think it was a good idea at all. All my loving. Lennon was never much of a fan of the band's straight-laced early work, and he described most of the band's early songs as throwaway and meaningless. Only a select few, like Paul McCartney's smash single, All My Loving, caught his attention as worthy enough to be included in his later playlists. During the infamous interview David Sheff had with Lennon in 1980 for Playboy magazine, Lennon was candid about his affection for this song. Throughout the interview, Lennon played several classic Beatles songs and offered his thoughts on them. He told David Sheff, "I'm sorry to say that All My Loving is Paul," as he went through the songs. But why does he feel guilty about having said it? Because it's a pretty solid contribution to the field. Although this was not the typical comment that John Lennon made regarding Paul McCartney's work at the time, Lennon was delighted to defend the music as one of Paul's first biggies. Here, there, and everywhere. The release of Revolver was a significant turning point for the Beatles. They needed songs to go along with their new look, and fortunately, they delivered one of their best records, which is also a fan favorite. It was the moment that they became tousled and spiritual. However, they needed the songs to go along with it. John was quoted as saying in the past that the song, Here, There, and Everywhere, was one of his best. I'm very sure that song was written entirely by Paul. And another one of the Beatles' songs is on my favorites list. During recording, he even remarked endearingly to the young musician, "Really wonderful tune, lad." Paul McCartney later elaborated, saying, "That was the only song that John ever complimented me on. Why don't we do it in the road?" By the time the White Album was released, tensions had already reached an all-time high. They had arrived at the point where Paul McCartney decided to record this track in a different room all by himself. Therefore, the fact that Lennon, who was annoyed, nonetheless commended it is evidence of the hard work that he put into it. Lennon said at one point he even recorded it by himself in another room. This is how things were progressing back in those days. When we came in, he had already finished making the album. The sound of him drumming and playing the piano by himself, his singing, but he was unable to. Perhaps he could successfully part ways with the Beatles. You're right, I have no idea what the problem was. The song was enjoyable to me. Nevertheless, I cannot speak for George, but it always saddened me when Paul would finish anything without including George or me in the process, but it was simply the way things were back then. Oh Darling. The song Oh Darling is evidence that the band was still able to generate a lot of excitement right up until the very end. Even though the band was about to disband, they continued to produce music that is now considered among their very finest. However, Lennon's praise for the piece was slightly underhanded, demonstrating, if anything, an even more profound sense of envious affection on his part. In the past, he had been quoted as saying, "Oh Darling" was a terrific one of Paul's that he didn't sing very well. I had the nagging feeling that I could have done a better job. After all, it was more aligned with my aesthetic than his. He will sing it because, what the hell, he wrote it. And now he will sing it. Before carrying on with the line of thought when he subsequently said, "I ought to have composed that song. It reminds me of a song that I would create." For No One. Another track from the Fab Four's album Revolver demonstrates an increasing amount of introspection in their work. The music has an element of realism that contrasts with the glossy-eyed tone of their prior work, and it proved to be sonically distinctive in its own right. These things get Lennon excited, so it should not come as a surprise that he likes this one. However, his appreciation was succinct and sincere. He merely stated that the work in question was one of my favorites of his, a beautiful piece of art. Fixing a Hole. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is most likely the record that best exemplifies the band's ability to work together, despite the tensions that existed among the group. Said it would not have been feasible for them to have been able to construct an album as colorful as this after months of arduous work if they had not been working from the same page. Again, John Lennon's appreciation was not particularly lengthy, yet he did not have a single negative thing to say about the vital work. In a very unusual move, he emphasized the word again while proclaiming in an interview, "That's Paul, again composing a good lyric." This was an extremely unusual occurrence. Band on the Run with Wings. John Lennon's comments on Paul McCartney's solo career are difficult to find. Most of the time, it seemed as though he was more concerned about the veiled insults hidden inside the tracks than judging the songs on their own. Nevertheless, the song Band on the Run is an exception to the rule. He remarked that the outing of his former teammates was a terrific song, and he even upped the compliment even higher by adding, "and a great album," which was praise that was lacking when Ram and other albums were released. Coming Up. McCartney 2's lead song, Coming Up, was the first notable evaluation of his solo efforts. It occurred when the friendship had been re-established, and a creative union seemed possible before Lennon's terrible end. Not only did John Lennon describe the song as a good piece of work, but Paul McCartney claims that it was also the impetus for John Lennon to get back into the recording studio in 1980 and start working on new material. The following is what John Lennon had to say about Coming Up. "I thought that Coming Up was amazing, and I liked the freak version that Johnny produced in his barn better than the live Glasgow one. If I had been there with him then, I would have agreed with him and stated, 'That's the one,' and I thought that the record label had a lot of nerve flipping around on him. But I see what they were going for. They want to hear the genuine guy singing, but I prefer the crazy one." That's it, guys. We've come to the end of this video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to click the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now. See you soon.